Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, I'm John, this is Media Trude, and welcome to Discovery Tour Ancient Greece, and oh bloody hell, I'm excited for this one. Oh, this is wonderful. So, just in case you've not heard of this, Discovery Tour is basically an official total conversion mod produced by Ubisoft that turns Assassin's Creed Odyssey into an interactive history book, and bloody hell, oh, this is wonderful. This is absolutely flipping wonderful, because me and Assassin's Creed Odyssey have a bit of an odd relationship, shall we say, which is a lot of people have said to me in the past, John, why have you never put Assassin's Creed Odyssey on the channel? It's set in ancient Greece, and you love ancient Greece, and that's true, I do, but the actual gameplay of Assassin's Creed, I was feeling a bit burnt out on that when Assassin's Creed Odyssey came out. Like, I played Syndicate and I played Origins and I thought they were both fine, but by the time Odyssey came around, yeah, I was just feeling a bit burnt out on the whole Assassin's Creed thing. Now, the ancient Greece thing, that really caught my interest, but then I realised, of course, in Assassin's Creed games, you don't really get history. What you get instead is a very high-level Cliff Notes version of history that then gets itself Assassin's Creedified and gets garbled by Templars and Assassins and Pieces of Eden and diddly-diddly-dee. So I looked into it a bit, and I saw that the reason Leonidas won at Thermopylae was because he had a magic spear that gave him superpowers, oh no, and that the entire Peloponnesian War was actually a plot by some form of secret Illuminati organisation, oh no, and that various historical figures did what they actually did in history because they were part of that secret Illuminati cult, and they were trying to take over Greece, and no. I love this history too much to watch it get Assassin's Creedified. So basically, what I wanted was Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but without the Assassin's Creed. And along came Discovery Tour, and bloody hell, I'm so excited for this!
Here, visitor. You are about to embark on a journey of discovery through the rich and fascinating history of classical Greece. You'll become fully immersed in the painstakingly detailed world built for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which you are free to explore at your own pace, without any danger or time pressure.
Bloody hell, yes! Yes!
Architectural marvels which still stand today dot its landscape.
Sorry, did you just start talking about buildings that are still standing, and then show us the Acropolis and the Temple of Zeus to Olympia, when the former got blown up during Ottoman occupation and is barely still standing, and the latter has completely flipping collapsed? Because if so, that was an odd choice of things to put on screen right then. Oh, here we flipping go. Obviously we're in Athens, because yeah, there's the owls everywhere, the creature of Athena. Athens, of course, named for Athena. And this is all I want, alright? This is all I want out of an Assassin's Creed game. I don't want to have to optimise my weapons and buy new daggers and stab people and diddly-diddly-dee. I just want a big, beautiful city where I can just wander around, meet historical figures, and learn about actual history, and that's just marvellous. And here's a good starting point right here. So yeah, I'm on top of a statue right now, but it's dressed in really gaudy colours. Because unlike this statue over here, which is how we normally think about statues in the ancient world, yeah, originally, statues were not actually just like, you know, grey and boring and whatever. Statues in the ancient world were incredibly gaudily painted in really bright colours. And no, leave me alone, I'll get back to you in a second. Yeah, they were just painted really brightly. But of course, the paint wore off over time, the stone didn't. So when we found them, we just sort of assumed for bloody years that, yeah, the statues were just grey all the time. But when we analysed them, we found fragments of paint on the surface, and thus figured out, yeah, not only were they painted, they were painted in ludicrously bright, garish colours, and it's flipping lovely. Yeah, presumably, we're actually already on the Acropolis, and hang on, I've got myself a bird in this game, don't I? Oh, that's the Parthenon! That's the flipping Parthenon! Right, back down onto the ground. Right, get out of my way, I'm gonna check out the... No, leave me alone, I'm gonna go check out the Parthenon! Oh, bloody hell, that's gorgeous. Right, and we can actually go inside, and yeah, the inside's been, lost to us, unfortunately. During the Ottoman occupation, yeah, they decided they were going to go and use the Acropolis as a place to store gunpowder. Guess how that ended? Not well at all. So, little bits of the Acropolis are still standing, but it is mostly ruins these days, yes. But bloody hell, bloody hell, it's gorgeous. And yeah, I've still got all my assassin powers, even though I'm not really an assassin, I'm just a passing tourist. So I can just, like, clamber up everything and go and have a little bit of a look-see at the facing up here, which is very famous indeed. And which, yeah, at one point, Britain kind of, stole and now keeps in the British Museum. and Greece has said, hey, can we have it back and put it in our museum? And the British Museum sort of replied, oh, sorry, I can't hear you, it's a terrible line, sorry, we're gonna have to try this call again next week. Now you're probably thinking, John, that's lovely, but this is basically just Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but without the gameplay, and no, there's way more than that. For example, yeah, we've just got these little bits of history dotted about, so if you just interact with those right there, that just gives you a vague idea of what you're looking at, but also, you can learn more, and get a bit of detail, and also get access to supporting primary evidence. So we've got ourselves a lovely vase right there of Athena Polias, fully armed, in front of a small burning altar on a neck amphora of Panathenaic shape. Absolutely flipping lovely. Probably of the 6th century BCE, though sometimes it's a little bit hard to date these things exactly. We can date them roughly based on the art style and whether it's red figure or black figure and stuff like that. But yeah, precise dating, very, very difficult indeed for amphora. And I just love how these little background details show what a huge amount of love and attention to detail was put into this game that, yeah, you might just very easily skip over in the main game, but in this mode, it's right there front and center. So there would have been a really important altar to Athena Polias, but yeah, we don't know its precise location because so much of the ancient Greek world is sadly not in great shape these days. So they estimated that it was probably erected to the east of the Erechtheion in the northern and most sacred part of the Acropolis right there. And the Erechtheion, by the way, is... hang on, back out. That's that thing with the caryatids, the female pillars right there, which, yeah, we do actually have a little bit of today. The Acropolis isn't doing so hot in this day and age. The Erechtheion's actually standing a little bit better, and some of those statues are not in terrible condition at all. You can still see some of those in various forms today. But yeah, this was in their original, very gaudily painted form, which is absolutely bloody lovely. Alright, let's go find ourselves some history here, because if I'm facing the front of the Parthenon right now, then this is going to be south, and on the south side of the Acropolis, we should have ourselves, hope I'm right, or this is going to be embarrassing, yes, the Theatre of Dionysos. Oh flip, let's go learn some stuff about theatre. Also, there's no fall damage in this mode, so screw you game, you can't kill me. You know, I always find the Theatre of Dionysos just a really terrifying, humbling thing, because so much of what we have of Greek culture, the tragedies of Aeschylus and Sophocles and Euripides and the comedies of Aristophanes, they were all performed in this one place because they were all written for these big dramatic theatre contests that always took place right here in Athens, right here in the Theatre of Dionysus. Like, one of the big tragic things about the ancient world is we have so little in terms of primary sources for ancient Greece, and it's almost weird to think that so much of what we have in terms of Greek culture, the plays, so much of them were written to be performed in this one place you can go and visit in this day, very often in competitions where they were competing against each other. But let's just move round the back over here, because I think I saw somewhere around here. Hang on, where are ya? We need to get ourselves a proper little... There we go. We need to get ourselves a proper little history lecture. And please be Aristophanes. Please be Aristophanes. That's not Aristophanes. That's way too pretty to be Aristophanes. Right. I'm a bit disappointed it's not Aristophanes giving the tour about theatre, because yeah, this game is set in 431 BC, the very beginning of the Peloponnesian War, and also, yeah, pretty much the beginning of Aristophanes' career. Many of the first big successful plays that we have from him were in, yeah, the 420s onwards, but he would have been starting to write about this period, though the plays from the time we only have, yeah, little fragments of, and we can't be sure when he wrote his first play. But yes, hello, who are you supposed to be precisely?
Welcome, wanderer, to one of the most prestigious places in Greece, the theatre.
And yeah, who precisely are you?
My name is Aspasia. Though I am not originally from Athens, I have climbed to the top of its social ladder using my wit and intellect. I've even earned the love of Pericles, one of the most powerful men in the city. The mind truly is a beautiful thing.
Right, Aspasia. That's an interesting choice to be giving the tours around Athens, because, yes, she was regarded as very, very intelligent indeed, and she was a companion of Pericles, though, yeah, exactly what she was and how she ended up coming to be in Athens and how she made a living in Athens is all a bit of a mystery. It's possible she was one of the Hetairae, basically a really high-class escort, but not in a bad way. There wasn't really much social stigma to being a really high-class escort in ancient Greece. That was a perfectly socially acceptable thing. So, yeah, she was known for being very intelligent, but unless I'm forgetting something, she wasn't really regarded as being closely related to the theatre in any way. So, okay, fair enough, give us a tour, because now we're going to go around the area and we're basically going to get a lovely little introduction to Greek theatre. And I can tell you if any of it's wrong or oversimplified or whatever, it's going to be marvellous.
The theater was where audiences gathered to watch plays. They were the highest form of art in Greece, and people saw theater as a symbol of complete harmony between the mortal world and the divine. When you're done taking in the sights and sounds, come see me, and we'll talk more. Until then, Wanderer.
Alright, so now we just follow the little line and get ourselves a lovely lecture.
Theater is not just part of geek culture, but was a major part of Greek culture.
Boo!
Comedies and dramas originated from the dancing and singing performed by members of the cult of Dionysus. Between 536 and 533 BCE, theater's burgeoning importance in Athens was demonstrated when the responsibility of organizing tragedies was entrusted to the Archon, the highest-ranking magistrate in the city. From then on, theater grew rapidly in popularity, and soon a permanent space for performing and watching plays was built on the slope of the Acropolis. During the 5th century BCE, theater became intertwined with Athens' democracy. It often functioned as an echo chamber for political ideas, and in some cases, it could even influence public opinion. As a result, in the 4th century BCE, Plato coined the term theatrocracy to describe his city's politics.
Not at all untrue there, not untrue in the slightest, especially in the early periods of tragedy. Aeschylus especially wrote very explicitly political plays that did actually go over to retell dramatically recent events in actual Athenian history, where it would be entirely possible that people who'd been there for those events might actually go on to be in the audience at the same time. But yeah, as time went on, it became a little bit more subtle than that. Both Euripides and Sophocles, as far as I can recall, never actually wrote explicitly real-world tragedies, but they could, of course, be metaphors. Now, comedy was a different thing entirely. Aristophanes is very overtly political because Greek comedy is very much open for fourth wall breaking. Like, when you're in a Greek comedy and the chorus comes onto the stage for a bit of a song and a dance routine, they will overtly just break the fourth wall and say, hey, that politician over there, he's a dick. He's an absolute flipping dick and he's super corrupt right now. And you can just do that. That was all absolutely A-okay. This is something that Aristophanes did at length to the politician Cleon, who was like his arch nemesis. Basically, throughout his entire career, right up to the point Cleon died, and then slightly beyond it too, even after Cleon died, Aristophanes kept slagging him off. Yeah, Aristophanes just kept throwing in little asides about what a garbage human Cleon was. Anyway, let's move on to lecture number 2.
Theatrical competitions were held in the sanctuary of Dionysus Eleutherius, god of wine and patron of drama. Dionysus was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Semele. Stories say that Zeus, who had fallen in love with Semele, appeared to her holding a lightning bolt in his hand. Semele was tragically struck dead by the lightning, but Zeus managed to save her unborn child, keeping the embryo in his thigh until it fully gestated. This is why the name Dionysus is sometimes thought to mean born twice. In Athens, theater was a part of the cult of Dionysus, and stage productions in the god's honor were held during festivals like the Linnea and the Great Dionysia.
Again, all perfectly true, but I do prefer the added detail to the story of the birth of Dionysus, that Zeus didn't just, accidentally forget he was holding a lightning bolt and thus blow up his girlfriend. No, Hera basically got jealous of Zeus having girlfriends, which happened a lot. Zeus had a lot of girlfriends, and Hera didn't really enjoy that one little bit. So yeah, depending on what version you read or listen to, Hera basically found a way of saying to Zeus's girlfriend, hey, I bet that's not really Zeus you're sleeping with, it's just someone else. The only way you could really prove it was actually Zeus would be if he actually showed you one of those lightning bolts that only Zeus has got. And yeah, Zeus had said that he would kind of grant her a promise no matter what, and he swore he'd do it. And then she said, hey, show me a lightning bolt, and Zeus had to do it even though he knew it would basically blow her up. So yeah, that's a more full version of the story, and I do rather like that version, because Hera's a dick and does kill a lot of people who Zeus slept with.
In Athens, there were 3 festivals that honored Dionysus with drama performances: the rustic Dionysias, the Linnea, and the Great Dionysia. For the rustic Dionysia, each deme of Attica organized their own Dionysiac procession. The parades were full of phallic songs, dances, and symbols meant to signify fertility, and participants wore drunkard masks and sang bawdy lyrics about the god. The Linnaea was the oldest Dionysian festival. It was exclusively reserved for Greek citizens and mostly made up of comedy performances. Finally, the Great Dionysia was the most important festival. Taking place over several days, it began with a parade called a phallophori, followed by a dithyramb contest, and ending with consecrated drama competitions.
All true, and as you may have guessed from the repeated mention of phalluses there, yeah, there are a lot of penises in Greek culture. An awful lot of penises, actually. In fact, I'm now starting to wonder whether the Herms are in this game, which are, yeah, little stones dotted about in honour of Hermes, but they should have a penis sticking out to the front of them, and I'm not making this up, by the way, about 15, 16 years after the date this game is set, there was a constitutional and political crisis in Greece because overnight somebody got drunk and snapped all the penises off. This was genuinely a real political crisis that happened in ancient Greece, and that's wonderful. Anyway, let's go on to the stage and get ourselves another lecture, except hang on, can actually... Oh, I get to join in if I want to. I can just stand wherever I want to and join in with the rehearsals. But no. Let's get ourselves a lecture instead about the stage itself.
The Great Dionysia was supervised by the head magistrate known as the Archon, who was assisted by 12 other magistrates. Among his duties, the Archon picked Chorigoi, rich Athenian citizens responsible for providing the budget for rehearsals and performances. 2 days before the Dionysia, a ceremony called the Proagon took place where playwrights introduced their work. The Dionysia finally began in earnest with a procession to the god's temple, followed by sacrifices and a symposium. The next 2 days centered on dithyramb contests, while the final 4 days were dedicated to drama competitions. The contests' outcomes were decided by 10 judges who were appointed at random by the Archon. The judges placed their votes in an urn, and 5 of the votes were randomly picked to determine the winner.
And I think you can see from what was just said there, the relationship between theatre and democracy that was mentioned earlier, and specifically direct democracy, where everyone got involved at every stage, which is what ancient Greece actually was, which is the choruses. Anyone could be in a chorus. Anyone could end up being a judge, even at the very highest level of government, the boule or council, which set the agenda for literally everything. That was all assigned by lot. Basically, theatre was as democratic as everything else was in Athens, which was very, very democratic indeed, within, of course, the limitations of only citizens, only men, etc., etc. It was still, you know, several millennia ago.
All Athenian stage actors were male, regardless of whether they were playing men or women. Tragedies originally featured only one actor performing alongside a chorus, eventually reaching a maximum of 4. Adding more roles opened up the opportunity for dramatic dialogue. During performances, they prepared themselves in the skene, a building that served as a backstage area, before emerging onto the proskenion, or stage. The skene could be painted to represent backdrops like palaces, temples, and tombs. Its roof was reserved for appearances by the gods. These gods could be moved around with a crane called a mechane, which produced spectacular visual effects. On stage, actors wore masks and elaborate costumes. For tragedies, they were adorned with magnificent clothes. While for comedies, actors playing male characters wore hugely exaggerated phalluses, probably to maximize the laughs.
Once again, just to confirm, yes, penises are, and always have been, funny. One small correction though, game. It wasn't always exclusively gods that appeared at the top of the skene over here. On occasion, under certain circumstances, it would actually be human characters too, such as in Euripides' Medea, when at the end of the play, she does appear up here. Though that's a bit of an edge case, because she was in a chariot that was given to her by a god. So I guess we'll give the game the benefit of the doubt there.
The centerpiece of the theater was the orchestra, or dancing place. It was a large, circular area that hosted choral performances, religious rites, and, presumably, acting. Choruses were composed of men wearing masks and costumes. Any Athenian citizen could be choritai, as long as they were selected by the chorus director. Chorus members also served as the equivalent of a curtain, as their entrance and exit marked the beginning and end of the play. New costumes and masks were produced for the chorus for every new play, and they were often just as impressive and elaborate as the performances. For example, Aristophanes' comedies feature the chorus dressing as wasps, frogs, birds, clouds, and islands. One of his plays, The Knights, even had men riding other men dressed as horses.
It is one of the great tragedies as far as I'm concerned that, yeah, we don't know precisely what any of these costumes ever looked like, because for the most part, there wasn't really any record made of these performances beyond the text themselves, and even then, the text was very often not actually written down. Originally, this was supposed to be like, you know, a one-off religious thing, because theatre wasn't just for entertainment, it was part of a religious thing related to Dionysus. So some people just thought, this is a one-off special thing, we don't need to actually, you know, write these plays down or anything, we don't need to record them, because that was for that religious ceremony, and next year, we'll have another one. Thankfully, eventually, a few years later, people did realise, hey, these plays are actually popular, and some people want to, like, you know, re-perform them elsewhere in Greece. Maybe we should start writing these down so they don't all get lost. But tragically, yeah, we have only a tiny fraction of the number of plays that actually existed, because if you consider what was being said earlier, that yeah, there were like 4 days of theatrical contests every great Dionysia, and then consider the number of plays we've got surviving to this day, which is a relatively small number from a relatively small number of playwrights. So much has been lost, it's just sad to think about that so little actually survives.
Athens' Theatron, or performance space, could seat up to 17,000 people, nearly a tenth of the population of Attica. Its excellent acoustics made it ideal for drama, but it was also sometimes used for political meetings and parades. The theater was accessible to everybody. This did not mean that seating was free, though. The first rows were normally where priests and public officials sat, while the central part of the auditorium was reserved for ambassadors and guests of honor. There is also evidence that men and women sat separately. In general, theater audiences were emotional and noisy. During performances, they would shout, curse, and throw things depending on their mood, and their reactions were just as much a part of the experience as the acting.
Fun additional fact on top of that, by the way, at this point in history, politics did not take place in the theatre, because yeah, as I say, we're at 431 BC right now. But give it a few decades, the actual Athenian assembly would move into the theatre, so they had a bit more space, because we'll go and visit the Pnyx, actually, where it actually happens at this point in history, because yeah, that was a space that wasn't really appropriate for its role. Now, there's actually more detail than what we've been seeing here as well, which is, if we go up to an area that we've actually already interacted with, here we go, we can get even more detail too. So when it comes to the orchestra, comic and tragic actors used their voice to deliver the words of the play, but they also relied on non-verbal communication and body language to perform their role. Actors had their own specific way of gesturing called cheironomia, meaning law of the hands. Due to the large spaces they performed in, as well as the masks they wore, actors depended on broad movements and systematized gestures to clearly relay their emotions to the audience. The different postures or schemata that made up cheironomia were taught in the gymnasia, rhetorical schools, and theatre schools. While much of the repertoire of gestures has been lost, historians have been able to reconstruct parts of the cheironomia by examining the art on some ancient vases. And yes, indeed, it is rather sad that the chorus is a bit of a mystery to us. We don't really know how they operated, how they moved. We believe they danced and sung, but we can't really be sure how. Because unlike what the lecturer actually said, the chorus didn't just come on at the beginning and the end to do a kind of like Shakespearean introduction and an epilogue. Instead, they'd arrive in regular intervals during the play, though it did vary play by play. Sometimes they'd like come in like the equivalent of separating out acts, doing a bit of a song and a dance routine, just providing, you know, commentary on what was going on, very often from more of an Athenian-style perspective, laying a bit of modern interpretation over what was going on in the tragedy, say. But sometimes the chorus would actually exist as a character, like they would be a group of nearby elders who one of the main actors would actually speak to and the chorus would reply. So the chorus had a very varied role. They could do all sorts of things. They could just be a nice song and dance routine, they could just do the intro and the outro, or they could actually be a main character who got involved in the action of the play, which is really cool. And yeah, I thought that would be Epidaurus. Oh, flip Epidaurus. We need to go and visit Epidaurus. That's my favourite theatre in the world. I love Epidaurus. Oh, flip, Aspasia wants to give me a quiz. Oh, bring it on, Aspasia. I am ready for ya.
Really? Then let's begin. Who was Dionysos' mother?
Alright, we all know that because that was in the story. Don't you worry, I know who Zeus's girlfriend was.
Correct. Unfortunately, Semele died before her son was born, but Zeus saved the unborn baby and raised him as a god. Next, another question. Which competitions took place on the second and third days of the Great Dionysia?
That is the dithyrambs, I believe. Yes, indeed, there we go. The dithyramb competitions.
Yes, the Thyramvi were hymns dedicated to Dionysos, and the Thyrambos contests were held on the second and third days of the festival. And finally, the last question. Which of the following is the oldest festival dedicated to Dionysos?
Ooh, I'm not sure that was actually in the lectures. I think if you wanted to know that, you'd need to actually dig into, the extra information on all of the little tour stops. But I'm pretty sure that's actually the Linnea.
You are correct. The Linnea was the oldest Dionysiac festival. Congratulations, Wanderer. You're a very studious theatre goer.
And there we go. That's marvellous. That's all for now. Thank you very much for your help, Aspasia.
Then I will leave you be. Farewell, Wanderer.
And there we go. I can just teleport anywhere I want. Right. Epidaurus, here we flipping come. And hang on. New reward, Praxilla. Ooh, hang on. Oh, sweet. I can just be anyone I flipping want, including small children. Hang on. If I'm a small child, am I still able to, climb? Because now I'm tiny. Hang on. Hang on. Let's find ourselves a nice statue here. Yes, I'm tiny, but oh flip, I'm actually running at super speed because the game wants me to keep running at the same speed. So, okay, if I try and climb now, that's... What the... That's amazing! That's absolutely flipping incredible. So, right, I can climb the same level even though I'm really, really tiny. Right, I have got some mad assassin skills here. Quite frankly, every Assassin's Creed game in the future should star this little girl because she has got the flipping skills to pay the bills. Right, we're going to go find ourselves some Epidaurus over here, and that should be somewhere in this sort of an area. That'll be it. That'll be Epidaurus right there, though. Apparently I can't fast travel there. There's a site of Perseus. No, don't care about that. Take me to the Valley of Dreams. That's a very dramatic name for Epidaurus right there. Yeah, just take me to Epidaurus. That'll do. Here we go, starting up top of the temple right here. There's the theatre over there. Oh, flip. Right, the Theatre of Epidaurus holds a very special place in my heart. Because when I was 16, I visited Greece for the very first time and went and visited all of the ancient spots. And Epidaurus was one of my favourites. And Epidaurus was also the site where I think I figured out I wanted to study classics at university, which I went on to do, and it worked out very nicely for me. And that was also the trip where I met my very first girlfriend. So yeah, Greece and Epidaurus in particular are very, very important to me. And here we flippin' go. Except, okay. I'm going to admit I'm a bit disappointed right now, because I've arrived slightly too early in history. You see, yes, of course, Epidaurus, the actual Greek theatre, was built in... what, 4th century? Maybe early 3rd? I can't remember. Yeah, so in Epidaurus, there's an amazing theatre, but in 431 BC, it hadn't been built yet, so we've just got these wooden steps here. Hang on, show us the picture again. Here we go, Theatre of Epidaurus, right there. So just crack that open. It's spectacular. It's absolutely spectacular, because the acoustics are basically perfect. You see that tiny, tiny speck in the middle of the round stage there? That's basically a little stone plate. Now, if you drop a coin on that, you can hear it pretty much perfectly from anywhere, any seat in the theatre. That's how perfect the acoustics are. It's just wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. Yes, indeed, and the text does actually specify that. So it was second half of the 4th century BC, though, like many sites, we can only put a rough date on it. We can't know precisely because no one was actually recording these things with that level of accuracy. And yeah, the most perfect theatre in all of antiquity due to the harmony of its proportions and its exceptional acoustics. And seriously, they demonstrate this. Don't skip out Epidaurus. People don't bother going to Epidaurus because it's a bit out of the way, but it's kind of worth it. It is a wonderful, magical place, and they do these demonstrations on a regular basis where you can just find a seat anywhere you want, and then the tour guide goes to the centre, and just drops a little coin from a very small distance off the ground, and you just hear it, and it's wonderful and magical and has a very special place in my heart. Also, I just love the absolute flipping bananas jumping ability of the young girl character. So if I just want to nip over there, no problem whatso-flipping ever. I was just about to go back over to Athens, and then I noticed that, yeah, Salamis doesn't have a single location on it. You can't fast travel there. There's no tours. There might be some of those little purple things, but quite frankly, I feel like that's a bit harsh to Salamis. Salamis is the site of one of the most important battles in the ancient world. The second great Persian invasion of Greece was basically dealt with between Thermopylae, Salamis, and Plataea. And I bet bloody Thermopylae up north has got its own bloody thing. Oh yeah, Thermopylae's got its own flipping lecture, but Salamis doesn't even get a bloody fast travel location. Dear oh flippin' dear. Oh, Salamis, they've done you flippin' dirty. I've been up and down this island, and I have found precisely one little tiny purple history note. This better be about the Battle of Salamis, by the way, and it better be really flipping detailed. There we flipping go, quite right too. So 280 BCE, a stunning victory for the Greeks, marking the beginning of the end of the second Persian invasion of Greece by Xerxes. Absolutely flipping marvellous. After the Greek loss at the Battle of Thermopylae. Ooh, okay, sure it was a loss, but that's still a bit of a harsh way to put it, though I guess we are standing in Athenian territory right now, so fair enough. And yes, indeed, this was how many of the Greek city-states chose to actually fight the Persians. They couldn't take them on directly at land, even at Thermopylae. With the Spartans' help, they hadn't been able to do it, so they built themselves a massive navy, because they had resources. They had plenty of silver. There were loads of silver mines floating around the ancient Greek world. So they built themselves a massive force of triremes, and they picked themselves a nice, narrow place to engage, where the Persian superior numbers didn't give them so much of an advantage, so it was a massive victory for Greece. But I feel like the description sort of missed out one of the really important things to focus on here, which is how democratic this system of warfare actually was, which is victory in this battle wasn't achieved through a small number of professional aristocratic cavalry or hoplites or whatever. It was achieved through boats, and ancient boats, triremes, were powered by oars, and for oars you need oarsmen, a very, very big number of oarsmen. A big Athenian navy is powered by a really, really big number of Athenians in those ships powering those oars. It's a very democratic way of waging war, and whether that's a historical accident or not, that Athens just happened to do very well in the battles where it was fighting the style of warfare, where they needed to rely on a very large number of their lower class citizens working together, I don't know. It's probably just a very convenient coincidence, but I find it a very pleasing historical accident if so. Right, well, we could hardly visit ancient Greece without learning about democracy, so welcome to the Pnyx. So at this point in history, 431 BC, this is where democracy happened, though admittedly, we're a little bit unsure precisely how it happened in terms of the orientation, because we know there was a Pnyx, and we know where that was, we found some ruins of it, we know what hill it was on, but we don't know exactly how it was orientated because we think it changed a bit over time. We know that people did stand here on the Pnyx, the top of a little hill, and give speeches to potentially thousands of Athenians who got to vote on the motions that were put to them because Athens was a direct democracy. But we don't know precisely how that works. Like, yeah, there's a hill here, so potentially this shouldn't actually really have trees on it, because people would have needed to be, you know, standing or sitting on that hill. This space the game's laid out is nowhere near enough, because thousands of people would have come along to this. Give it a few decades, though, they will move the assembly, or the ecclesia, to the theatre, where we were earlier, which definitely makes a lot more sense. But yeah, you can kind of see why there might be a bit of a separation, because the theatre, like the Parthenon, that's a very religious thing. This was a political thing, so it wasn't really supposed to be up on the Acropolis, which is all holy and whatever. It's down here in the polis, you know, politics. Polis, meaning city in ancient Greece, so it makes sense it's down here, close to the people. And it's also close by to the agora, the marketplace. And that's not just for convenience. The thing is, when you've got direct democracy, that means everybody votes on everything, constantly, every day. And lots of people didn't necessarily want to vote on everything. They got a bit bored of voting for things. They just wanted to get on with their day, go shopping or whatever. So what they had to do was they had to hire a bunch of slaves who basically carried around a rope that was dipped in red dye to try and basically shepherd people into the ecclesia and force them to take part in democracy that day to make sure there were enough people actually flipping voting. and if you got any of the red paint on you and you didn't go to the ecclesia, then the local magistrates could give you a fine. So yeah, there's actually jokes in Aristophanes about people who just want to get on with their day having to like jump out of the way of this red rope because they didn't want to have to pay a fine or actually attend the assembly. Because I believe at this point in history, yeah, 431, I think that might predate payment for attendance. Payment was introduced at one point, but I can't remember for the life of me exactly when that payment was introduced. Possibly, actually, the Tor over there will tell me, which will be absolutely flippin' marvellous. But yeah, the reason I find this setting particularly interesting, by the way, is 431 is basically the last really, really good year of Athens, alright? Athens is doing very, very well at this point in its history. The second Persian invasion has been kicked out, and Athens' allies have basically quietly been turned into subject states. In fact, you know what? Let's look at a map. This would be more interesting with a map. You see, Athens, like we were talking about, really relies on its navy. Athens has got a really, really powerful navy, and that means naturally it was able to assert dominance over all of the islands of the Aegean. So the Athenian Empire, if that's what you'd call it, because empire isn't really the right term, but screw it, we'll just say it's an empire for the sake of ease. Yeah, the Athenian Empire is made up of a very large number of islands. And originally, they formed the Delian League, named after this lovely island right here, where the treasury of the Delian League was located. But at some point Athens realised, hey, you know all those boats that we've now got over here in Athens, thanks to the money you've been paying me, I've decided we're now going to use those boats to basically extort all of you guys into doing whatever it is I want. At which point everyone thought, oh, maybe we shouldn't have given Athens that giant pile of money and all of those boats that they said they were going to protect us with, but now instead they're using to enslave us. And yeah, lots of nasty things happened. I think about 4 years after this point in history, one of the islands decided to rebel, and Athens kind of genocided them a bit, which was a bit of a dick move, it must be said. And at some point before this point in history, I think about 20, maybe 10, 20 years ago, Athens said, hey, you know how we keep all of the money on that island that isn't Athens? How about we just start keeping it in Athens instead? It'll definitely be safer in Athens. And everyone said, hang on, you sure that's a good idea? At which point Athens replied, hey, everyone who's got a massive fleet that can destroy everyone else, raise your hand. Oh, only me? Right, we'll be having all of the gold in Athens then. Which is pretty much how they built all of those massive temples and massive statues over on the Acropolis over there. Yeah, the Athenians were kind of dicks. But as I say, 431 is also the dawn of the Peloponnesian War, and it didn't go well for Athens. Within about 2 years, there'll be a massive plague that will kill a very significant part of the Athenian population, as well as taking out one of their most beloved leaders, Pericles, which left the door open for Cleon, the guy I mentioned earlier who Aristophanes absolutely despised, who was, yeah, very hawkish, very pro-war, to come in and basically say, hey, we ought to war, like all of the war, all of the time. Even if we're losing the war, we're just going to keep warring anyway, because yay, war! Give it a few years after that, Athens' various subject states start rebelling, and yes, indeed, start getting genocided, as I just said. That was Cleon's fault, by the way. And within 15 years, Athens will decide it's a really, really, really good idea, while they're at war with Sparta, who I remind you are in Greece, just around the corner, to send basically all their strength to Sicily on a vague, slightly mumbled promise that there would probably be lots of gold in it for them. Spoiler warning, there was not much gold in it for them, there was just death. An awful lot of death. It was basically the stupidest military adventure in ancient history. Anyway, let's go chat to Aspasia again, because not sure why this wouldn't be Pericles. Like, you know, Pericles is at the height of his powers right now, and he's only got 2 more years to live. For goodness sake, Aspasia, step aside and let Pericles give the talk.
Welcome, wanderer, to the democratic center of Athens, otherwise known as the Pnyx. The Pnyx was the meeting place of the Athenian assembly and the physical embodiment of democracy at work. This tour will give you insight into how citizens made decisions and kept the city running. We can talk more when you have finished the tour. See you soon, wanderer.
Oh, go on then. Let's go and have a tour about democracy in Athens and see whether there's any more details I'd like to add in.
The Athenian assembly was known as the Ecclesia. It met at the Pnyx 40 times a year to discuss various civic matters, and each session usually lasted a few hours. The word Pnyx is believed to mean something close to packed together. This was probably a reference to the fact that during meetings of the Ecclesia, the location would be filled to its capacity, with citizens packed in practically shoulder to shoulder. all male citizens were allowed to directly participate in the democratic process. Those over 20 years old had the right to speak and vote, while those over 30 could be elected to the higher position of magistrate. In total, there were approximately 30,000 citizens in Athens in the classical period. To draft and adopt decrees, 6,000 of them had to attend the meeting.
Now, I'm not sure I'd really use the word elected for many of the magistrates, actually. The most senior important positions were indeed elected. Like, you couldn't just be made a general by chance, because that'd be a really stupid idea. But a great majority of the magistrates were just assigned by lot, completely at random.
Citizens came from all over Attica's 10 districts to attend the meetings of the Ecclesia. The meeting was presided over by an executive council called the Parthenon. Every session began with a sacrifice to Zeus Agoreos, the patron of the assembly. During the meeting, citizens delivered speeches from the Pnyx's platform on whatever issues the city faced. Afterwards, the issue was voted on with a show of hands from the gathered assembly. The Ecclesia made important decisions about subjects like grain importation, expenses, and declarations of war. While they could not directly enact laws, they had a say in appointing Athens' legislators, which gave them a large role in shaping the city's daily operations.
Now, you might well be thinking at this point, hang on, John, if this is supposed to be representing all of Attica, which, by the way, if you're unfamiliar, hang on to the map. Attica just means the wider area, this little kind of area of Greece that Athens is at the centre of. But yeah, Attica is a wider area that was kind of deemed to be like, directly controlled Athenian territory. But if you're, say, a farmer who lives and works over here, and things are constantly being voted on a day-to-day basis right here in the centre of Athens, then surely this farmer is going to be massively underrepresented. And indeed, that was a bit of a problem, and Athens never really found a great solution to it. In fact, there's actually an Aristophanes comedy that directly addresses this. The Wasps is basically a comedy about how the Ecclesia is full of grumpy old retired men who have nothing better to do with their time, so they enjoy going down to the Ecclesia and basically voting in the cruelest, nastiest way, trying to ostracize people and go to war all the time and diddly-diddly-dee. Because the average citizen wasn't able to, take time off work or go away from their farmland, because this was still a very agrarian society. A lot of time and manpower had to be put into, growing enough food to not die. So a lot of people were farmers, say, and as a result of that, yeah, the Ecclesia could very often be not necessarily representative of the wider population. And of course, as we heard a second ago, while there were a certain minimum number of people that had to attend for it to actually make decisions, that could still be a relatively small proportion of the entire Attic population. So as a result of that, yeah, sometimes if the wrong crowd showed up, they could make some very dubious decisions. And there are instances in Athenian history where they voted on one thing one day and then voted to repeal it the very next day when a different crowd was in attendance.
While some citizens only participated in the sessions of the Ecclesia, others could become more involved in democracy as magistrates. Magistrates were elected from among Athenian citizens over 30. They were often successful orators and charismatic politicians, and they held much more sway over important decisions than the average citizen. One of the most famous magistrates was Pericles, who was so popular, he held his position for 15 years.
I should point out that part of the reason he was popular was because, yeah, he was the one who said, hey, how about that giant pile of gold over there, we bring it over here, and how about instead of spending it on the fleet we said we'd spend it on, we spend it on building giant shiny things in Athens. Because when you do that, yes, you can get very, very popular indeed. Also, now I'm wondering whether this is supposed to be Pericles, because the camera did focus on you. Also, can I nudge you off the stage? Hang on, no, get off the stage. Can I knock you off the stage? Go on, get off the Pnyx. Get off the Pnyx. Off the Pnyx you go. No, sadly, Pericles is very firmly staying on the Pnyx. He's been here 15 years. He's not giving up his position for me.
In theory, every Athenian citizen over the age of 20 had the right to participate in the assembly. However, some of them lived far from the city, and others could not financially afford to miss a day of work to attend meetings. For these reasons, the city introduced a special allowance called a misthos ecclesiasticos in the 4th century BCE, meant to encourage participation. Originally, it was 2 obols, but the politician Cleon raised it to 3.
So there we go, that's when they introduced the payment. Lovely, thank you for the confirmation game.
Athens introduced several innovations that heavily influenced modern society, including theater, architecture, and philosophy. However, their greatest contribution was their democratic government, which introduced the concept of a city ruled by its citizens. The decision to adopt democracy as a government, a choice made in 508 BCE, shaped civilization as we know it, and continues to affect us today.
Which is indeed a lovely romantic way of looking at things, but we should also point out, yes, direct democracy was a messy thing, and didn't always work that well, and today, basically no society uses direct democracy. Everyone goes for some form of representative or parliamentary democracy instead, because it leads to slightly less ludicrous bananas results than Athenian direct democracy did. Okay, time to see if I can pass the flipping quiz.
Approximately how many citizens were in Athens in my time?
Ooh, okay, bit of a difficult one. Oh, hang on. Okay, not so difficult. It wasn't actually 30 billion, no. It would be about 30,000. We don't know exactly what the population of Athens was. We think it could have gone up to around 100,000-ish, but of course, many of them weren't citizens, because that's adult males, and resident foreigners don't count, and diddly-diddly-dee. 30,000 would be about right.
Yes, there were approximately 30,000 citizens in Athens, although the population as a whole was much larger. On to the second question. Who of the following was a famous Athenian magistrate?
Ooh, it's going to be Pericles that gets brought up. Yep, there we go, there's Pericles.
Yes, Pericles was an extremely popular magistrate who managed to keep his position for 15 years. Only one question left. What does the word penix mean?
And as they pointed out earlier, kind of fun thing, we can't be 100% sure, but we vaguely think something like packed together.
Correct. The penix was usually crowded with citizens attending meetings of the ecclesia. You know enough about democracy to be a politician yourself. Well done, Wanderer.
I like how she's just saying that to a small child, that's marvellous. Oh flip, I've unlocked the ability to be Alcibiades! That's the guy who probably broke all the penises off the statues during the political crisis, that's magnificent! Oh flip, I'm Alcibiades, right, we need to go and find ourselves some penises to snap off. Where are they? Where are you hiding your penises, Athens? But sadly I suspect YouTube would not be thrilled with my great penis hunt, so I guess we should probably leave things off here. But you know what, ladies and gentlemen, I think you get the point. This here is the Discovery Tour Ancient Greece, and it's pretty much everything I want an Assassin's Creed game to be, which is, it's a big, beautiful, interesting world, but I don't need to bother doing any of the, like, you know, assassinating. And there's none of the whole Templar Pieces of Eden nonsense. It's just a case of wandering around, meeting historical figures, mainly Aspasia over and over, to be honest. I was kind of hoping for a bit more variety of the historical figures. Going to really interesting places, learning about them. There's flipping history everywhere. There's tours, there's quizzes. It's just basically a way of making history fun. It's absolutely flipping magnificent. Oh, I love this. Because sometimes I think we forget that gaming could be so much more than what we let it be. Sometimes we just treat gaming too much as a form of disposable, throwaway, high-action entertainment, and gaming could be such a wonderful tool for education, but we very rarely actually see developers and publishers put the effort in to actually make that happen, because you can probably make more money just selling ridiculous, massive, high-action diddly-diddly-dee. But they've put so much effort into this, and sure, the world has already been created, but you know what? They've clearly gone out, found themselves a bunch of historians and archaeologists and all the rest of it, put this together, added in all the history lectures, all the rest of it. I love this. I genuinely love this. This is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and I would love it, absolutely love it, if they went back and actually did a discovery tour for all the previous Assassin's Creed, because this is wonderful and wholesome, and it's just a good thing, alright? It's just a really, really damn good thing. We could do with more of this sort of thing in the world, because it's just a game mode that says, hey, learn something. Knowledge is fun. Learning's good. I love it. I absolutely flippin' love it. Maybe we'll see this again, ladies and gentlemen. I've no bloody clue how this video is going to go down. Maybe most people will find this incredibly flipping boring. I don't know, but if you enjoy me just basically going around Greece, listening to lectures, then adding a bit more commentary on top of it, let me know. I could be tempted into turning this into, yeah, basically a little tiny history series. We shall see. I shall keep a very, very close eye indeed on how this video does. But in the meantime, I've been John, it's been many a true nerd, and this has been Discovery Tour Ancient Greece. Thank you very much, and goodbye. You know, I really hope we've agreed open borders with Japan, by the way, otherwise they have basically just invaded. I may have picked the wrong fight over... Yep. And my cities, of course, have got even more flipping high-tech, though mysteriously still completely dependent on, you know, an aqueduct. Now, I'm not saying your entire army is mostly already dead, but it kind of actually is.